to this corner of the exhibition, the Sculptors Guild exhibition. I'm very proud to be part of the guild, relatively new member. And here I'm presenting like a piece that is quite typical of my work and made in steel. So to say a little something about myself, I started by drawing all my life as childhood and teenager. Didn't study art, but art would always like creep out, and I ended up like giving up the fight, and I just do art now, and even internal conflict, but that's what I do. And I started doing metal about 8 years ago, after doing lots of paintings that were more like on the symbolic type of paintings. And working with metal and this material and the environment, what came out when I weld is that typical like signature of, they look like blades, it's spiky, it's cut out forms. And the first pieces I made in steel in this environment was of machines and the industrial tools we use, and being like completely covered, like just like a samurai with a mask and gloves and all the protection to work with this material. I came out with first pieces that were more like weapons, more like the armor of samurai, like the big mask of a samurai. And little by little, my work has evolved into something more organic and related to, for some reason, to the theme of the phoenix, the rebirth from ashes of that mythical animal. And I believe I am both artistic, poetic, and rational with sense of science or mathematics. And so the process itself is very scientific, mathematic, and the result is perfectly imperfect to me. And I love that that irregularity that comes out mostly now when everything is, or almost everything is produced in factories. And I go to art fairs and I see perfect resins and these big toys for adults. And I keep on doing my little mini revolution in my studio of cutting things myself, getting burned, counting my scarves, and doing my little pursuit of some maybe retrograde, going back to the primitive art, because as symbolic as my work was in the paintings, I feel that I went beyond the symbolism, where it's very much at the origin of the material, of the shape, of it's beyond speech. I make pieces. This is one of them that has the shape of a wing, or it could be like flame. It can be like, it could be like grass of like I like the word of grass blades in English, because it's like blades, even though grass is like so delicate. So this is how it has evolved. And as far as the phoenix, they are like symmetrical shapes that end up having these wings and also like look like fire in space. And I would almost say that I am not really choosing to make those shapes, but this is what comes logically. And the process itself is always like what triggers me, like what interests me, like a child with a toy. That's everybody gets this dopamine boost at some times. Like for me, it's starting a project from nothing. So it's not completely true for this one, but typically what I do is that I start from a flat sheet of metal, square. I draw on it with chalks and then use a tool called a plasma cutter. So I need to be really geared up to do that. It's highly dangerous. The powder of metal gets into your lungs and that's it, stay there, and probably rust, or I don't want to know. And I cut everything very specifically, and the tool itself is industrial and usually used to just like make one line and cut two pieces of metal together. But the way I do it is very refined drawing. And when I do it, I am a little bit of that's my minute of being a diva, because nobody can get close to me. I have to go to the bathroom before I do that. I have to breathe deep, and it's like meditation mode. Nothing can move. And I do my cutouts on thin metal. And if I make a mistake, even in the drawing or like the cutting, the piece will fall down. And then that's it. And you start from scratch, because that means it's kind of over. Even if you repair it, it's not going to hold. So that's like the process itself is to me more interesting than the piece itself, the result. It's like about drawing, shaping, and then going from that two-dimensional drawing into a shape. And the shape itself is like the exciting part because I discover the shape. So it's a bet. I make my drawing thinking it's going to look a certain way, but in the process, I have this anxiety of telling myself, is this going to work? And usually it does. It sometimes requires a little like bristling because it's still metal and I bend the metal, not so much on this piece, but I could show you like photo, I can actually, no, I don't have my phone. A picture of the finished piece. There is some bristling to do to bring the metal the way the imagination like think the metal should be, but then you have to use your arm and your strength to actually, or sometimes your knee or your foot, to actually shape it that way. But it works, and then when you say to somebody, this is from a square piece of metal, that's highly complicated piece, when I tell the people who see them and who show some curiosity that it comes from a flat sheet of metal, I can see their heads like bending a little bit on the side, and I can see that the mind is trying to deconstruct it and go back into the flatness of it. So this one was made from 2 rectangles, so it was not made from a square. 2 rectangles that I just cut and unfolded. As you can notice, if you want to play that game too, it has been like folded this way, this way, this way. So the wing itself would be content in a rectangle about that size. Like the pattern from this one would be like 2 rectangles about that size, created that big space. It's almost like putting a little bit of jam on a piece of bread and spreading it. It's like expanding the metal into this bigger dimension from just a small piece of sheet in the origin. And then there is movement, a little bit, as we got a beautiful explanation earlier about the saw in the other room. The metal is held in the vertical position, so it's not falling. If there was a little bit more of an angle, it would just like go with the movement of it, like the weight. But because it's held, it somehow like stays. And what I like too is the movement of it, because the movement, like from the graphic appearance, gives a sense of movement, but there is a movement in itself that I highly appreciate, and the noise, which also like brings to another dimension. So I was thinking to maybe like use a fan, or I might do that in some other installations. But there is also like a full game of shadows that can be created. So it's something that's it's maximum development from just that little piece of metal that is insignificant, and with a process that is simple in itself, that I would imagine anybody can do, to get to something like that. That's the game I'm playing, doing my art. And symbolically, okay, the phoenix is renewal, and this is how I live my life. Never happy in the moments, always evolving, always pushing myself out from my comfort zone. And I wish I would find a better association to perfection and comfort, but I have not found it yet. So I keep on pushing and evolving. And that's about all I would say about that piece. And if you have any question, I'm open to answer.
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned that each piece, or each branch, or whatever, comes from a piece of metal which is about that high?
No, the full.
They all come from.
Oh, the full?
Yes. So
But how do you stretch it?
all of this, you see, all this side is from that piece of rectangle. That is about.
Okay.
If you, that would be something like that. The rectangle would be about this
So that's
big.
the spine, yeah.
Yes, and then I welded them here together around the tube that keeps the structure of it.
Right.
And just because for the fun of it as well, like to add some kind of practicality in a piece that is so impossible to make, impossible to clean, impossible to transport. Just to put a little practicality to it, I made it in 2 pieces. So that top part comes out like a flag.
Okay.
And we can carry the base separately,
Yeah.
which is very heavy, and it has to be for the
Yeah,
for the movement, for the exactly.
counterbalance.
Yeah, so I like a little touch of absurd sometimes, like in the work. A little sense of humor is always welcome, mostly when you have to carry it.
Yeah, okay.
Any other question?
Et encore, then I stop. 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, we did this wonderful bird that was exhibited in Riverside Park.
Yes.
That was what, 2 or 3 years?
It was actually 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, yes.
Yeah. I mean, that of course reminds me, this is recent, right? This one.
Mhm.
Discovered this. But for the bird, it was kind of a similar technique, or
Absolutely.
was the same thing? Huh?
So the bird is mentioning was a project for the city of New York. It was on 68th Street and the Hudson River. So this was a 26 feet wide piece made exactly on the same process. And it was also like a phoenix. So for the story of the bird, the challenge was that I could not do it completely by myself, but I did most of the work myself, and it was done in Gowanus, in a place called Siret, where I had access to the place. So the metal sheets were not those 2 little rectangles like that. They were actually 10 feet and 10 feet. I made the drawing. I took the small drawing because I made so many models for that one. I made the drawing and then I enlarged it. And then I had to find a way to get the drawing on the metal. So I was standing up on the big piece of metal myself. I could not say completely that it was made from 1 piece, where I am very proud of, like usually to say, oh, it's just 1 piece, but it was made of 2, just to transport the metal to the workshop. And I did all the cutting myself for the piece you saw.
Mm-hmm.
And underneath, I brazed bronze for like 2 weeks and a half, like brazing and listening to some audiobooks, because it's like torch for like 2 weeks and a half by night was a little.
Amazing. Did you have a small model before you went into this?
I did a small model with
You
a
had,
model and
you were going. You had a model. You had a small maquette.
yes, and also we had to do that to get the permits for the city of New York. It's not like you can put anything out there.
Okay.
So permits are like a big thing. And it's, thank you for asking this question and mentioning this large statue. It's true that it was like gigantic. That raises the challenge I have now of going more towards public art. And this process is not really public friendly. So it's good because I found like a new challenge. Like I really need to find a way to make it work in a place without having any suicidal people try to impel themselves on it. And we know that it's tempting, you know, like because you put a piece, we know like that you put a piece outdoor and people have to touch it, you know, and challenge it. It's so we had a very nice show last year here on Governor's Island with the Sculptors Guild as well, and I had a piece outdoor that was a red bird. Similar technique as well.
Is it here? No.
No, not this year. But it was here like for all summer last year. But it was on a high pole and the bird was difficult to reach. So.
I would suggest that you not refer to the sound as noise, but music.
Yes, that's a nice idea. Let me play it. It's not the harp, but.
There you go. Music.
Any other question or comment?
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Bravo, bravo.